Hello, and welcome to our next episode of our series highlighting current and exciting research projects in the MGNet Research Consortium. My name is Anusha, and I'm the program manager at MGNet, and I'll be your host for today. I am joined with Dr. Justin Leach, who has been selected as our 2024 MGNet Pilot Grant awardee, and I am also joined by Mr. David Park, our MG patient advocate. In this episode, we will feature Dr. Leach's pilot project titled Novel Approaches for Incorporating Rescue Therapy into the Statistical Analysis of Clinical Trials in MG. I now will give you both the floor to discuss this important topic in MG research.
Thank you so much, Anosha, and hello, Dr. Leach. Thanks for being here. My name is David Park. Congratulations on being the awardee, the MG awardee. I would like to start by asking you just a little bit about yourself, if you could tell us a little bit about your background.
Sure. So I'm an assistant professor of biostatistics, so maybe a little bit, or at University of Alabama, Birmingham. So probably a little different from who typically shows up, I guess, in maybe some of these series. I imagine you have probably more MDs, but I'm fairly applied, so I work with a lot of MDs and trials or on other observational studies. So my expertise is more in statistical design, analysis, that kind of thing. So I'm concerned more with the process. So we're trying to figure out how do we analyze studies, how do we design them. So here, more in the clinical trial case, to give us the best chance of reaching correct conclusions. So not just whether a therapy is effective, but how effective is it, that sort of thing. So that's, I guess, a little bit about my background.
Great, thank you. And I know that process is something that's so important, especially with myasthenia gravis. So could you tell us a little bit about your research?
Sure. So here, the main, I guess, wrinkle that we're looking at is what happens in trials where you have rescue therapy. So essentially in a trial, a lot of times, well, I mean, the ideal trial, you randomize people to, let's say, an active treatment and a placebo. It's not always a placebo, but something like that. And then, if everything goes perfectly, then you just compare those two groups at the end of the study. And that essentially tells you, and from that, you can learn whether the treatment was effective or there are two treatments, which one is more effective or something along those lines. So when rescue therapy enters the picture, that ends up complicating the statistical analysis. And even it can complicate the design as well. So essentially what the project is trying to do is to provide some guidance around how do we approach the design and analysis when patients get rescue therapy. I guess I should add like context, because rescue therapy is happening when you design the trial how maybe you don't want people to have rescue therapy, but if someone has their symptoms get a lot worse, right? You can't just say, oh, well, too bad for you. Like that's not, these MDs we're talking about, you want your patients to do well. So in study protocols will provide for like, okay, in these circumstances, you might have plasma exchange or IVIG, something like that. And so that's obviously designed to help alleviate the symptoms. So that's where sort of the comparison becomes difficult, because then, supposing you have maybe a case where, say you have a treatment that works, right? So those people are better because the treatment works. So that group will look like they're doing pretty well. But then if you have, say, 15 or 20% and the placebo group receive rescue therapy, well, the people that receive rescue therapy are probably going to do a little bit better as well. So you could end up with a situation where the placebo group looks more similar to the treatment group than they should, but it's not necessarily because it's not the placebo that was doing anything. That's not doing anything by design. And so you're basically having to try to figure out, okay, well, how do we actually get to the estimate of a treatment effect that tells us the answer to the question we want to know? So that's kind of an overview of what we're trying to do.
Hey, thank you. And why is this research important, and what impact do you hope that it will have?
Right. So I guess building off the example I was just giving, if the treatment group or two treatment groups or treatment and placebo group look, say, more similar than they should, or it could be reversed, you could have a situation where, a bad situation, I suppose, you could have a treatment that where the treatment group was actually more likely to have rescue therapy. But either way, you're distorting the comparison between the treatments. And so in the worst case, you could either think that a treatment that maybe you could think a treatment was effective, or you might think it's ineffective when that's not the case. You could also just have a distorted treatment effect. Maybe the treatment was, or therapy was much better than you thought it was, or based on what you were seeing comparing those two groups. And so there's a risk of reaching either a wrong conclusion or possibly a biased conclusion. And so then that, I mean, obviously will have effects, I guess, down the line with, they're not just, generally, at least in trials, right, you're trying to improve practice, you're trying to inform clinical practice. And so if you're making the wrong decision or maybe just a biased decision, then that's not going to be good for patients. So ideally, you have more robust study design, you have a better chance of reaching the right conclusion, and then having effective therapies reach patients.
And so following up on that, what would be the impact, would you say, for the patient and the patient's experience?
Right. Well, I think hopefully what you would have is more effective treatments. So there's still, myasthenia gravis is still very active in terms of research. There's, from what I've gathered in the literature as well, there's more of a focus on an increasing focus on treatment resistant disease. So, you know, if you have a relatively healthy population, or at least not severely having severe symptoms, you may not have as much rescue therapy. So kind of the standard methods might work a little bit better. But as you gradually are trying to address more difficult disease, more complex scenarios, you may have more rescue therapy. And so ideally what it would allow is that maybe you could, if you have a framework to deal with it, you could have inclusion criteria that allowed for more severe disease, people with more severe disease to be in trials, and to be able to address that and still tease out what the treatment effect is. And so I guess the short of it is, you know, hopefully the result will be, since I mean, this is not a specific clinical trial, but that it will help inform the design of trials that would lead to effective therapies that then patients would be able to access and improve their lives and daily functioning.
Great. And what is the future of this research, and what's next?
Sure. So a lot of, I guess what well, one, I'm fairly collaborative, so my research will continue to be working with MDs. The reason I didn't come to this particular project just out on my own, it was actually through collaboration with practicing clinicians. So I'll continue doing that sort of work. And then more generally, I guess from a statistical side, I've been interested in these. So rescue therapy is the technical term if you're getting statistics. It's an intercurrent event. Something that happens after randomization, basically, that complicates the analysis, that sort of thing. So I'm broadly interested in addressing those kinds of questions from more the statistical side.
Great. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you both so much for your time and participating in this really important discussion. I think this will be a really great resource for MG patients and their families, and hopefully we can continue funding this type of research. So thank you again.
Thank you.